Hi, my name is Chris Tuck. I am a survivor of all forms of childhood abuse and neglect behind closed doors. I'm here to talk about the lived experience, the impact, the prevalence and what needs to happen to better respond to protecting children and young people from all forms of abuse. So my early life looked like this. I lived with my mum and my dad from 1970 to 1977 when my mum left the family home because of domestic violence. I lived with my two brothers and one sister. In 1977, my dad started seeing a lady 3 doors down from where we lived in South East London. She had 7 daughters. We became a big extended family. I lived with my dad and my stepmum between 1977 and 1981. Within this family, there was a lot of mental abuse, physical abuse, and some sexual abuse. I was not a victim to that sexual abuse. In 1981, my dad was arrested and prosecuted as a sexual offender. My mum got custody of us through the family courts. We went to live with my mum and the man she had remarried, our stepdad, and their child that they had together whilst we wasn't living with them. We thought that the abuse would stop. We thought now was normal family time. We thought we was going to get the love, the care and the nurture that we hadn't got in our previous 2 family setups. That didn't happen. Further mental abuse, physical abuse and sexual abuse occurred within this family dynamic. The impact of all of these different family settings, the multiple layers of abuse, became our living legacy that we've had to try and deal with as adults, and it's been exhausting. So as a child, I found the courage to speak up about what was going on at home on multiple occasions to different agencies. So there was the school, there was social services, and there was the police. At school, I wrote a story about what was going on behind closed doors at home with my stepmum. The starvation, the hunger, the just go to your bedroom, the chores that we had to do, the physical harm that we was taking from her. And the teacher said, who wants to share their story? I put up my hand tentatively. She read my story, she left the room, she came back. She then said to me, your overactive imagination is going to get you into trouble one of these days. That silenced me. When we lived with my stepmother and my dad was in prison, my brother would often run away from the family home to try and find my mum because he wanted to get us out of that abusive home. The police would be called. They would pick my brother up, bring him home, and then my brother would get punished all over again. The police never asked, what is going on? Why are you running away from home? There were many missed opportunities for them to find out and actually do something different to actually protect us from what was going on. When my mum was going through the custody process to get us back into her life, social services were involved within the family. During the custody process, social services would often come and interview us when we were living with my stepmum. She would put clean clothes on us, put food on the table and create this facade that everything was okay. I told social services that this was all just false, it was all pretend. They would then report back to my stepmother what we'd said. We would then be penalised for what we'd shared, and that also silenced us into not speaking up. I left home 3 months before my 16th birthday because I knew the police couldn't bring me back. At 16, you're an adult and you can do what you want, you can live by yourself. So, between the ages of 16 and 28, I had a mask on. I wouldn't let anybody close to me. I didn't tell anyone about my background. I didn't tell anyone about my life. I needed to keep myself safe. I was building a life that I wanted. I knew that I needed a roof over my head, some money in the bank, and a career. And I wanted all of that before I brought children into the world, because I wanted to give my children the best. Love, nurture, care, kindness. I didn't want them to suffer in any way, shape or form. I wanted to be able to provide them with the basics and so much more. My children were not going to know abuse at all in any form. That was really important to me. When I left college, I pursued a career in accountancy. I worked full-time as an accounts clerk and worked my way up. I studied in the evenings and at weekends to do my AAT and my CSAM qualifications. At the age of 28, I qualified as a chartered management accountant, and I thought I'd made it. I thought I had arrived. I was married by this time. I owned my own home through a mortgage, and I was going places with my career. I then felt that it was the right time to start looking at having a family. When I had my son, I had this overwhelming moment of I would kill anybody that harmed my child, and it brought into perspective everything that I had endured in my childhood, and it made me start having a bit of a spiral with my mental health, and I actually had a physical breakdown at work in front of everybody. I was feeling the impact of trauma in my everyday life, and I didn't know this whilst I was going through it. It was only with hindsight that I actually knew that what I was going through in that mental health decline was connected and caused by the harm that I went through as a child. One of the hard moments for me was when I was cleaning my son one day after he'd done a very smelly nappy. I felt like I was taking too long to clean him, and I had a thought go through my head: are you abusing your son? And it hit me like a ton of bricks, and it was like, of course you're not. But I literally was frozen in time, and I knew that I needed to do something about my thoughts and my feelings. My husband came up and took over cleaning my son, and I made an appointment with my GP to talk about what was actually happening for me. So I went to the doctors and explained what was going on for myself, and he said it's not surprising that I was thinking and feeling the way that I was because of my childhood experiences and the trauma impact of going through those experiences. And this was the first time ever that anyone had linked what I was feeling and thinking to the past. And it got me thinking, actually, is there something that I can do to help myself? And he referred me to 6 weeks of counselling. I never knew if this would help or not, but I went along because I wanted things to change for me. And I just spent 6 weeks crying my eyes out, literally crying. There was no speaking, there was no why are you here? But that may have been the best thing that had ever happened to me, because that pent-up emotion that was just expressed through crying enabled me just to draw a breath and go, let's start looking at what you can do to help yourself to move forwards, to move past all of this that you're feeling and thinking. And that was the first time anyone had ever connected the dots for me. And it got me thinking, how is adverse childhood experiences linked to your everyday present mental health and your physical health? And that is when I started doing my research and changing the way that I was living my life. After my 6 weeks of counselling, I knew that I couldn't carry on with my career as a chartered management accountant. I turned to my other love, which was fitness. I used to run to help calm me down, to help deal with the anger that I felt, but I never knew why I felt so much anger until later on. I did accountancy part-time and I did fitness slowly, one class at a time, building it up, and then I switched from accountancy completely into fitness. So I had a community fitness that I was building up, and then I also branched out into teaching Pilates because I needed to do something more gentle, because by this time my hips were playing up and I've now had to have 2 hip replacements. And all of this is part and parcel of adverse childhood experiences, the impact of trauma on mental and physical health. It's all connected and it can have so much different impacts for victims and survivors of childhood abuse. After my breakdown at work, I had to get a new job and I became the business manager at the Priory Psychiatric Hospital. Now, there were many individuals in this hospital that had suffered harm from domestic violence, from childhood abuse, from bullying, whatever, but they had dealt with their pain through alcohol, drugs, food. I then started thinking, how was it that they were in hospital and I wasn't? I had gone through an awful time too. So it was important for me to start thinking about the differences and how I could not only help myself, my family, but also other people, because they had a story to share and they shared that with me. I also had a story to share and they wanted to know what I was doing differently. So I went away and thought about what I was doing differently. And to be honest, in my early 20s, I had suffered from bulimia. I had used exercise maybe to the extreme of just running to make me feel better, to get rid of the feelings of anger out of my body. So everything I was doing was not always balanced either, of course, but it's a learning journey. And when I look back with hindsight on everything that I was doing and the new knowledge that I was gaining through my health and wellness training, I came to the solution that it's all about healthy mindset, healthy habits, knowing how to manage your stress, knowing what good nutrition would do for your body, and also looking at how to build your self-esteem. So there was a whole raft of good information and good knowledge that I was starting to get hold of and started to put together, and from that I created the Breaking the Cycle Cleaner Living Therapy psychoeducational program that I now deliver through the Survivors of Abuse charity for victims and survivors who have gone through any form of harm, who were impacted or are impacted in their daily lives, and to show them a healthier way to deal with everything that they are dealing with because of the abuse that they've gone through. I worked at the Priory Hospital for 12 years, and in 2012 I left there to write my autobiography, Through the Eyes of a Child. And I put on a launch event, I invited 80 people, and I stood up and spoke for the first time about the childhood abuse that I'd been through, its impact on me, my mental and my physical health, and also the impact on my two brothers and sister that are also in the book. And we wanted to do this to show that any abuse that you go through as a child is not your fault. You are not responsible for it. You will be impacted, and you deserve help and support to deal with the impact, whatever that is, however it shows up for you. After the launch of my book, I really felt I needed to speak up more. So I started looking around at charities that were dealing with adverse childhood experiences, abuse in all its forms. So I reached out to NAPAC, I reached out to the Survivors Trust, and I wanted to get more involved in actually shining a light on childhood abuse, its impacts, and what we could do differently to help victims and survivors move on with their lives. So it was really important to me to start this advocacy, this campaigning, this activism. And I did that with two special ladies, and I'm not going to name them at this moment in time. And we started the Survivors Alliance. And at this time, there was so much going on about institutional failures when it came to abuse within institutions that there was an inquiry being asked for. And with this inquiry, we started getting more voices involved, and we started to work with Theresa May to get this inquiry up and running. In 2015, I became a member of the Victim and Survivors Consultative Panel at the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, and this led to an 8-year inquiry costing £186 million. So the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse was so important for so many individuals that came forward. For some, it was the first time they'd ever spoken about what they'd been through. It was the first time that anyone had just listened to them. It was the first time that they were able to say what needs to change in order to better protect children and young people from sexual abuse now, but also how better to respond to children and young people, but not only children and young people, but the adults that had gone through it. So I just wanted to share some facts with you, if you don't mind. There are 3.1 million victims and survivors of child sexual abuse in England and Wales. 500,000 children are sexually abused in each and every year, according to the Centre of Expertise on Child Sexual Abuse. There were 15 inquiry investigations. 52 reports were published, 1 interim report, 19 investigation reports, 24 research reports, and 8 engagement reports. There was 325 days of public hearings. There was 2.5 million pages of evidence processed. 725 witnesses gave evidence, including 21 bishops, 4 archbishops, 2 archdeacons, 1 cardinal, 43 senior police officers, 29 lords and ladies, 8 former government ministers, the former DG of MI5, and 3 ex-prime ministers. Many people have not heard about IICSA and its work, and that's an absolute travesty. And this is why I'm here today, one of the many reasons why I'm here today, trying to bring awareness of IICSA, its work, its findings, and why it's so important for the current government to implement the 20 recommendations that were published in the final report back in October 2022. We have to do different because we know different. We don't need to keep asking people about their lived experiences that are re-triggering and re-traumatising. All of the lived experiences captured by the inquiry over its 8-year life are in the final report. We know what needs to be done. It's in the final report. Yet that report, along with other inquiry reports, along with other serious case reviews, are sitting on a shelf. We keep hearing lessons will be learned. When will these lessons be learned? After being a consultant to IICSA, when that finished, I became a consultant to Anglia Ruskin University and working with IPRI. I also added value to the National Review into child sexual abuse within the family environment. I have my own website, which is Chris Tuck, motivational speaker and trainer, and I will go into organisations, whether it's education, whether it's social care, whether it's the police, to do training around primary trauma and secondary trauma. So it's really important to keep showing how the impact of abuse turns up and how those working with individuals that have suffered primary trauma can make sure that the individual going through their services have the best possible journey through their system as possible by being trauma informed and educated around the impact on individuals that have suffered child sexual abuse and exploitation. This work is really important to me, holding people to account, wanting change to happen in this space, because I know what it feels like to have gone through these lived experiences. I know what it feels like to be let down by the professionals who should have been there to protect me. I know what it feels like to live with the everyday struggles of the trauma impacts. I know what it feels like when you can't get the right support and therapy that you need to heal. That is why I do the work that I do. It gets me up in the morning. It makes me knock on those doors when those doors are firmly shut in my face. It makes me want to just do more, do better, and I won't stop and I can't stop. How do I feel about all of this? To be truthful, I want to swear, I want to scream, I want to shout, I want to show the world my rage. I want to show everybody the days where I can't get up and speak, the days where I will just crumble and cry. But you won't get to see that, not anymore, because that is my past and I want the present day and the future to be different. I want it to be different for our children and young people, and that anger that I can't express like I would want to because no one would listen, I use it as that internal fire to make me get up and speak out and do different and bring awareness and educate. So from someone that couldn't speak, from a child that used to hide underneath a slide at nursery, someone that couldn't hold eye contact with anyone because I felt unsafe, I felt threatened, and I didn't know that, but that's how it showed up in my life. I spoke out after I wrote my book and I continue to speak out, because we as adults have to be upstanders, not bystanders. We can't be complicit in the silence. We have to speak up for the vulnerable, children, young people and adults that who have not shared what has happened to them, that are living with the daily impact of trauma, and many don't even know that what is happening to them on a day-to-day basis, their symptoms, their mental unwellness, their physical unwellness. They haven't dotted the I's and crossed the T's. They don't know what they don't know. So it's here in this video showing you, sharing with you that adverse childhood experiences because of abuse in all its forms and because of neglect can and will have an impact on your day-to-day life, on your health and well-being. You do have the power to take back control over your lives, speaking up if that's the right thing for you, speaking to people that can help and support you if that's right for you. Whatever it is you need, I urge you to don't suffer in silence. I urge you to go out and get that help and support, because it is out there. Go to websites like the Survivors Trust, like Rape Crisis. Go to informational websites like the Centre of Child Sexual Abuse Expertise. There is so much wealth of information out there. You are not the only one going through this stuff. You are not the only one being impacted. You can get your life back. You can live your life. You can succeed. You can fulfill your potential. And I really urge you to get the help and support that you need. Live your life. Find love, life and laughter after abuse. That's my ending words to you all, because you all deserve that and so much more. Hi everyone, this is an update to the footage that you've just watched, which was filmed in late December 24. Since then, there has been a media frenzy around the topic of grooming gangs, organised networks. Now, I've done some media interviews myself around this, and I will put the links to those interviews below. Now, in these interviews, I shared that whilst I understand that some people want a national inquiry into grooming gangs, why it may not be the right solution at this time. I also share that unless there is a change in the Inquiries Act, that any recommendations made from any inquiry are not enforceable unless there is a government will to do so. In this video, I have shared with you that most abuse goes on within the family home environment, behind closed doors. I have shared the impact with you, not only on the individual, but the family, the community, the next generation, if the right responses and interventions are not in place. Now, this media frenzy has really raised public awareness around grooming gangs, sexual abuse and exploitation in general. And it is our duty as adults to protect our children and young people. And calling anyone right wing is not the right thing to be doing. If you are a compassionate human being, you will want to be an upstander and not a bystander when it comes to protecting children and young people from sexual abuse and exploitation. Now, my campaign group
has been pushing for the full implementation of the IICSA recommendations, because it's the package of measures that address the cross-cutting themes, re-institutional failings, that was detailed in all of the inquiry's work. These cross-cutting themes came from victim and survivors' experiences of all forms of sexual abuse, exploitation, within institutions, online, the home environment, organised networks, and so much more. Now, on the 6th of January, Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary, announced that the government are actually at last going to act on IICSA, implementing all of the recommendations. Now, she has only announced action against 3 of those recommendations. And she also said they will be setting up a victim and survivors panel to oversee the implementation by working with the ministerial group going forwards. Now, as you know from the video footage you've watched, my campaign group, we've been asking for a child protection authority and a minister to drive the recommendations, the implementation of all of them, in order for us to have this foundational cultural change that we need. New laws, new policies, new procedures. Data capture will show where the problems are, and then we can address where the data leads us. But unless we collect the data, we can just turn a blind eye and say, it's not happening. We know that sexual abuse and exploitation is so prevalent, it's endemic in our society. And it's up to each and every one of us to challenge and to demand that the IICSA recommendations are implemented. And then from there, we can carry out any further investigative work that needs to be done, research work that needs to be done, and change whatever needs to be changed, because we've got that child protection authority, we've got that minister that is responsible solely for doing this work. If anyone wants to talk to me about anything that I've said, or the campaign group that I belong to, please get in touch. Thank you for listening. Please share this video far and wide, and I appreciate all of your support. Thank you for now. Bye.
It's time to stop talking and to take action. Who's with me?